I need to tell you about the Christmas that made me stop celebrating the holiday altogether. I know that sounds extreme, but after what happened in my parents' house last December, I can't even look at a Christmas tree without feeling sick. It started about a week before Christmas. I was staying at my parents' place in rural Pennsylvania, just helping out and spending time with them before the holiday. My mom had put up the tree in the living room like she does every year, nothing fancy, just a 7-footer with the usual ornaments and lights. She'd already started putting presents underneath it, wrapped neatly with those little tags that say who they're from and who they're for. The first morning I noticed something was off, I didn't think much of it. I came downstairs to make coffee and saw that a couple of the presents had been moved. Not dramatically or anything, just turned slightly, like someone had picked them up and put them back down in a different position. I figured maybe my dad had been looking for his reading glasses or something and bumped into them. When I asked him about it at breakfast, he just shrugged and said he hadn't been near the tree. The next morning, it happened again. This time, more presents had been moved. A few of the gift tags were facing inward toward the tree trunk instead of outward like my mom always arranges them. She's particular about that kind of thing. When I pointed it out to her, she looked genuinely confused and said she definitely hadn't touched them. My dad denied it again, too. We laughed it off, joked that maybe we had a Christmas ghost or something. But then, the tags started disappearing. Not all of them, just one or two at a time. I'd come down in the morning, and a present that definitely had a tag the night before would just be sitting there blank. We searched around the tree thinking maybe they'd fallen off, but we never found them. My mom was getting frustrated because she couldn't remember which gifts were which anymore. There were no pets in the house, no little kids who might be messing around. It was just the three of us. The thing that really got under my skin was this one specific present. It was a medium-sized box wrapped in red paper with silver ribbon. I noticed it because it had been sitting right in front of the tree, center stage. Each morning, I'd find it had moved farther away. First, it was a few inches to the left, then a foot back. By the fourth day, it was almost completely behind the tree, shoved up against the wall. When I tried to move it back, my hands were shaking. I don't know why. Something about it just felt wrong. That's when I convinced my parents we needed to set up a camera. I bought a cheap security camera from the hardware store in town and positioned it facing the tree. We all felt a little ridiculous about it, like we were hunting for Santa Claus or something, but at that point, I just wanted an explanation. I needed to know what was happening. The first night with the camera, nothing showed up on the footage. I mean, nothing moved at all. The tree just sat there, completely still for hours. But when I scrubbed through the video the next morning, I noticed something in the audio. Around 2:30 a.m., you could hear breathing. Not heavy breathing like someone was standing right next to the camera, but soft, steady breaths somewhere near the tree. It went on for maybe 20 minutes, then stopped. I played it for my parents. My mom went pale. My dad tried to rationalize it, said it was probably the heater kicking on or air moving through the vents, but I could tell he didn't believe that. We kept the camera running. The breathing happened again the next night. Same time, same duration, same soft rhythm. But still nothing moved on the video. The presents stayed exactly where they were. It didn't make any sense. How could we hear someone breathing right next to the tree, but not see anything? Christmas Eve came, and that's when everything went completely wrong. I woke up that morning and immediately knew something was different. The red box with the silver ribbon, the one that had been moving, was gone. Just completely gone. I tore apart the living room looking for it, checked every corner, under the couch, behind the other presents, nothing. My parents hadn't touched it. They were just as confused as I was. I pulled up the camera footage, my heart pounding the whole time. At first, everything looked normal. The tree, the presents, all sitting there in the dark. Then, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the footage cut to black, complete static. For 11 minutes, there was nothing, just dead air and a blank screen. When the feed came back at 3:18, the red box was sitting in the exact same spot it had been originally, right in front of the tree. But it was opened. The paper was torn, the ribbon hanging loose. The lid was off the box, tilted to the side. I felt like I couldn't breathe. None of us wanted to look inside, but we had to. My dad was the one who finally picked it up. Inside was a single photograph, old and faded, the edges yellowed with age. It showed our living room, the same living room we were standing in, but the photo had to be at least 30 or 40 years old based on the furniture and the quality of the photo. There was a Christmas tree in the corner, decorated almost identically to ours. But that's not what made my stomach drop. In the background of the photo, standing in the far corner of the room near the window, was a person. You couldn't see their face clearly, it was too dark and the photo quality was too poor, but you could make out their shape. They were just standing there, completely still, watching whoever took the picture. My mom swore she'd never seen that photo before. My dad didn't recognize it either. We didn't know who the person in the corner was, didn't know when or why the photo was taken. But as I stared at it, something caught my eye that made my blood run cold. The person in the photo was wearing a sweater, a dark green knit sweater with a white pattern across the chest. I looked down at what I was wearing. The same sweater, the exact same one. I'd pulled it out of my old dresser upstairs without thinking. It had been mine since high school. I dropped the photo. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My mom picked it up and stared at it, then looked at me, then back at the photo. Nobody said anything for a long time. We left the living room that day and didn't go back. Spent Christmas in the kitchen in the den, avoided that part of the house entirely. After New Year's, I helped my parents take down the tree and pack everything away, but none of us would go in there alone. We worked fast, didn't talk about it. I don't know what was in that house with us. I don't know how that photo ended up in a present that disappeared and reappeared, and I really don't know how whoever or whatever it was knew I'd be wearing that sweater. But sometimes late at night, I still hear that soft breathing in my head, and I wonder if it's still there, standing in the corner of my parents' living room, waiting for next Christmas. I haven't been able to listen to Christmas music since last winter. Not a single song. The second I hear those opening notes of any carol, I feel like I'm back in that house, standing in my dark living room, listening to voices that shouldn't have known who I was. It was late, almost midnight on December 23rd. I was living alone in this little house on a quiet suburban street in Ohio, the kind of neighborhood where everyone keeps to themselves but waves when they see you. We'd been hit with a snowstorm that evening, one of those heavy ones where the snow just keeps coming down in thick sheets. Around 11:30, the power went out. The whole street went dark. I lit a few candles and was getting ready to just go to bed when I heard it. Singing. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it, or that it was coming from a TV in a neighbor's house, but it was too clear, too close. It was Christmas caroling. I went to my living room window and looked out at the street. Through the snow, I could barely make out shapes on the sidewalk in front of my house. 4, maybe 5 figures standing in a loose group. They weren't moving, just standing there in the storm, and they were singing. But something was wrong with it. The voices sounded distant and warped, like they were coming through water or a bad phone connection. The tempo was off, too, dragging in some places, rushing in others. It didn't sound like people who were singing together. It sounded like recordings of different people layered on top of each other, all slightly out of sync. I stood at the window waiting for them to knock on my door or move on to the next house, but they didn't. They just kept singing, the same song over and over. God rest ye merry gentlemen. I couldn't see their faces through the snow and the darkness, just silhouettes lit faintly by the streetlight down the block that was still working on a backup generator. Then the lyrics changed. Instead of God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay, I heard my name, my full name. God rest ye Michael Patterson, let nothing you dismay. My stomach dropped. I stepped back from the window. Maybe I'd misheard, maybe the storm was playing tricks with the sound. But they sang it again, clearer this time, and there was no mistaking it. They were singing my name. I grabbed my phone, thinking I'd call the police or something, but there was no signal. The storm must have taken out a cell tower. My hands were shaking as I moved back to the window, trying to get a better look at who was out there. The singing continued, and then it changed again. Michael Patterson, 32 years old. They were singing my age now, working it into the melody like it belonged there. Michael Patterson made a choice that can't be sold. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. That second part, the choice, I knew exactly what they were talking about. When I was 19, I was driving home from a party and I hit someone's dog. I didn't stop. I just kept driving. I've never told anyone about that, not a single person. It's eaten at me for years, but I've never said it out loud. And now these people, these strangers standing in the snow outside my house, were singing about it. I backed away from the window, my breath coming fast. The curtains moved slightly, swaying like someone had brushed past them, even though all the windows were closed and locked. There was no draft, no reason for them to move. I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, the candlelight flickering around me, and the singing continued outside. I had to see their faces. I had to know who they were. I forced myself back to the window and pressed my face close to the glass, cupping my hands around the candles to block out the reflection. The figures were still there, but I couldn't make out any features, just dark shapes in heavy coats, heads tilted slightly upward like they were looking at my house. No faces, just shadows where faces should be. I stepped back again, and that's when the singing moved. It didn't fade or get quieter, it just suddenly came from inside the house, from my kitchen. The same voices, the same melody, but now they were in the next room, singing my name, singing about that dog I killed 13 years ago. I felt like my legs were going to give out. I grabbed a flashlight from the coffee table and pointed it toward the kitchen doorway. Nothing, just my empty kitchen in the beam of light, but the singing was so clear, like they were standing right there in the room. Michael Patterson, do you hear the guilt you hold so near? I shouted at them to stop, to get out of my house, but my voice cracked and came out weak. The singing didn't stop. It grew a little louder, and I realized with horror that it was coming from multiple directions now. The kitchen, the hallway upstairs, the basement door. Then it stopped, just cut off mid-word, like someone had flipped a switch. The silence was so sudden and so complete that it felt worse than the singing. I stood there in my living room, flashlight shaking in my hand, waiting. The candles flickered. The house was completely still. That's when I heard my front door open. Not the sound of a key or someone turning the knob, just the slow creak of the door swinging inward on its hinges. I spun around and pointed the flashlight at the entryway. The door was wide open, snow blowing in, the night air freezing against my face, but there was no one there. I ran to the door and looked out, sweeping the flashlight across my front yard and the sidewalk. Nothing, no carolers, no footprints in the snow except the ones I'd made earlier when I came home from work. The snow in front of my house was completely undisturbed, smooth and perfect, like no one had been standing there at all. I slammed the door shut and locked it, then shoved a chair under the handle for good measure. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with the flashlight and a kitchen knife, watching the front door until the sun came up and the power came on. The next day, I asked my neighbors if they'd seen or heard anything. Most of them said they knew. They'd been asleep. But Mrs. Chen, the older woman who lives 3 houses down, gave me this strange look when I mentioned carolers. She said caroling was canceled in our neighborhood that year. Canceled years ago, actually. She said back in the 90s, a group of carolers went missing on our street on Christmas Eve. 5 people, just vanished. No one ever found out what happened to them.
She told me some people claim to still hear caroling on snowy nights, but most folks just ignore it. I moved out 2 months later. I couldn't stay in that house. And I swear, sometimes, late at night when it snows, I still hear it, faint and far away, like it's coming from another room. My name, sung in those warped, broken voices. And I know they're still out there, waiting.
I still have the ticket. I keep it in a drawer in my desk, and sometimes I take it out and stare at it, trying to make sense of the date printed on it. December 24th, 1993. Except, I rode that train last year, in 2024. It was supposed to be a fun thing, you know? A Christmas train ride through the countryside. This small town in Vermont does it every year, reopens this old train track just for the holidays. They deck out the whole train with lights and garland, play Christmas music, serve hot chocolate. It's cheesy, but in a good way. My girlfriend wanted to go, so we drove up there on a Saturday night about a week before Christmas. The place was packed, families everywhere, kids running around with candy canes, everyone bundled up in their winter coats. The train itself looked beautiful, all lit up against the dark sky, steam puffing out of the engine. We got our tickets and lined up to board. Most of the cars filled up pretty quickly, and we ended up being directed to the last car at the very back of the train. The second I stepped inside, something felt off. It was quieter, not like peaceful quiet, but muffled, like the sound was being absorbed by the walls. The other cars had been loud with conversation and laughter, Christmas music playing over speakers, but in our car it was almost silent. There were only about 6 other people in there with us, and none of them were talking. They just sat in their seats, staring forward or looking out the windows. The decorations were weird too. While the other cars had fresh garland and new LED string lights, ours had old tinsel that looked faded and brittle, and the lights were those big, bulky ones from decades ago. Some of them were burned out. The red velvet on the seats was worn thin in places, and there was this smell, like old paper and dust. My girlfriend, Emma, noticed it too. She leaned over and whispered, "This car is kind of creepy." I laughed it off, told her it was probably just the oldest one they had. Maybe they were restoring it or something. But I felt it too. Something wasn't right. The train lurched forward and we started moving, slowly picking up speed as we left the station. Through the windows, I could see the town lights fading behind us as we headed into the forested area outside town. The ride was supposed to last about 45 minutes, a big loop through the woods and back. Emma tried to get comfortable, but I could tell she was uneasy. The other passengers still weren't talking. One older man near the front kept checking his watch every few seconds. About 15 minutes in, the train started to slow down, not gradually, but in this jerky, uneven way that made the car rock slightly. The lights flickered, once, twice, then steadied again. Emma grabbed my arm. "Is that normal?" I didn't think so, but I didn't want to worry her, so I just shrugged. That's when I pulled out my phone to check if maybe there was some announcement or update about the ride. The screen lit up and I stared at it, confused. The time was there, 8:37 p.m., but where the date should have been, there was nothing, just a blank space. I refreshed it, locked and unlocked the phone, but the date just wouldn't display. I glanced at Emma's phone when she pulled it out. Same thing, time, but no date. She looked at me, her face pale. What the hell? The train slowed even more until we were barely crawling through the woods. The forest outside was pitch black, no lights anywhere, just endless dark trees. I stood up and walked toward the front of the car, thinking maybe I'd go find a conductor or someone who could tell us what was going on. But when I reached the door that should have led to the next car forward, I stopped. There was a window in the door. I looked through it, and my stomach dropped. There was nothing there. No connecting car, just an open coupling, and beyond that, darkness and trees moving slowly past. The rest of the train was gone. Our car was alone on the tracks. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. Emma saw my face and stood up. "What? What is it?" I couldn't speak. I just pointed at the door. She looked through the window and let out a small gasp. The other passengers were getting up now too, moving toward the front, and I could hear someone starting to panic, their voice rising. The train jerked to a complete stop. The lights went out entirely this time, plunging us into total darkness. Someone screamed. I felt Emma's hand find mine in the dark, squeezing tight. For maybe 10 seconds, we sat there in that silent, lightless car, and I swear I could hear breathing that wasn't coming from any of us. Deep, slow breaths, like something huge was standing right in the middle of the aisle. Then there was a jolt, violent and sudden, like we'd been hit by something. My head snapped forward and everything went white. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the wooden platform at the station. Emma was kneeling next to me, her face hovering over me, scared out of her mind. "Oh my God, you're awake! Are you okay?" I sat up slowly, my head pounding. We were back at the station. The train was there, still decorated and lit up, people boarding for what looked like another ride. I looked around frantically. "Where's the last car? Where were we?" Emma looked confused. "What do you mean? You passed out right when we were about to board. You just collapsed. They called an EMT, but you woke up before they got here." I insisted we never boarded. I told her about the ride, the strange car, the missing train ahead of us, but she just stared at me like I was losing my mind. She said we'd been standing in line. I'd suddenly gone pale and then I'd dropped. That was it. We never got on the train. I found one of the event staff, this older guy with a clipboard, and I described the last car to him. The old decorations, the faded velvet seats, the outdated lights. He shook his head slowly. "We don't use that car anymore. Haven't in years. It's not even coupled to the train." When I insisted that I'd been inside it, he got this look on his face, uncomfortable, and he told me I should probably head home and rest. But as we were walking back to the parking lot, I felt something in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. A ticket. Hole-punched, slightly yellowed, and with that musty smell. It had my name on it, and a date. December 24th, 1993. I did some research when I got home. Couldn't sleep, so I just started digging through old news archives online. I found an article from December 25th, 1993. There had been a Christmas Eve train ride that year, on the same route, same small town, same festive event. The train had derailed in the woods. Most of the passengers were injured but survived. But one car was never recovered, the last car. It had somehow separated from the rest of the train during the accident and vanished. They searched for weeks but never found it, and the 7 passengers inside were never seen again. 7 passengers. I counted the people in that car with us, 6 others plus me and Emma. 8 total. But Emma said we never boarded, so maybe it was 7. I still have that ticket, and sometimes late at night, I wonder if I ever really came back at all. Because my phone still won't show the date, just the time. And I can't shake the feeling that I'm still in that car, alone in the dark, waiting for a train that's never going to arrive.